Summer Walker is an American R&B artist who wore two Hmong-inspired outfits to one, perform, and two, the BET Awards. The Hmong community responded. This is our hot take. Welcome to Hmong-ish. I'm Pachia.
And I'm Sean.
So, the Summer Walker case, there's been tons of media coverage on it. The Hmong community online has responded. What do you think?
I've heard about it, and I think, a lot of people is talking about it because it's, because of the cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
And, so who is Summer Walker first, though?
So I didn't know who Summer Walker was either. I had to look her up, and she's performed with like Cardi B, or like she has music videos with Cardi B.
So she's a celebrity.
She's a big celebrity with like SZA. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm not that cool with SZA. Oh my gosh. Okay, see, I'm not that cool with pop culture. I only listen to Doja Cat. I'm sorry.
I've been out the loop since like 2010.
So I didn't know who Summer Walker was. I didn't know she was so big. The Hmong community is screaming cultural appropriation because many people are offended that she wore it without giving credit to Hmong people, and that she wore it in very sexual way. But there are so many different sort of opinions out there. Mm-hmm. And I think today it'd be interesting for us to talk about our opinions on it, because cultural appropriation has been an ongoing issue in the Hmong community, and in many indigenous communities.
Yeah, definitely. And let's look into cultural appropriation, what the definition is.
So what does it mean?
Cultural appropriation is the adoption, usually without acknowledgement, of cultural identity markers from subcultures or minority communities into mainstream cultures by people with a relatively privileged status. I think the Summer Walker case kind of hit some of the points here. Summer Walker case was they bought a Hmong Sao, and then they rebranded as Laurel Street brand.
So the brand, so the brand was Laurel Street. And their brand, I think they also styled her. So a lot of people responded. So the response from the community, like a lot of people were educating. Like I was taking a look at like the Instagram posts, people's Twitter responses, people's TikTok responses. A lot of Hmong folks were coming out and talking about what the sao is, like educating people on the history of the sao, how it's worn. Really upset. And then I think what got me more upset was just how some people who aren't Hmong responded and was just like, okay, who cares? That's, for me, is the more upsetting part. We can go more into that. On like the topic of cultural appropriation, like one, like the Hmong people aren't credited, and these are like very symbolic pieces of Hmong attire. And then there are some people who actually don't mind because they think it's a type of cultural appreciation. Some people think Summer Walker looks beautiful in it. Some people are like, well, why are Hmong people... Some people are like, why are Hmong people speaking out now? Because Hmong people appropriate other cultures like Lao culture and Thai culture, which I think is an interesting response. And then another response is that Hmong people sexualize their own dress. So why is that an issue that she's wearing it in a sexual way when Hmong girls be wearing Hmong stuff in sexual ways all the time? And that's a good point. I mean, I kind of agree with that. What does that say?
I think my initial response to the post was like, oh, she's pretty hot. But then, you look into it and you're like, okay, is this cultural appropriation or not? And then
is it cultural appropriation?
It is. It's not that it's wrong, but it's because they didn't pay homage to the culture. Like the Royal Sheep brand didn't say this is a Hmong sao, and they didn't create it from scratch. They literally just bought a sao and then modify it.
That's my bigger issue with this. So I think. Sorry, not to cut you off, but like on the topic of cultural appropriation, one thing that I noticed in the community is that we're very vocal about it, but the majority of what people want to see has historically, within the past few years, just been like, we want you to say it's Hmong. And for me, I'm like, that's not enough just to say it's Hmong. And, people talk about how it's great that people are appreciating the Hmong culture, which to some degree I think is valid. But if we aren't even able to really tell like outsiders or like people, the public, about what a piece is or what a piece means, then how much are they actually able to appreciate our culture?
This is a very symbolic piece to the Hmong community, and so the
maybe you can tell us more about it. What is the Sao?
There's a lot of interpretations of it,
Right.
oral history. I think the Sao plays a very important role in the Hmong community.
So it's spelled Xauv, which is pronounced Sao in Hmong Da, in the white Hmong language, but it's called differently in Hmong Joa, Lupao, right?
Lupao, yes.
Yeah.
Lupao, how Sao. Yeah. And so Sao actually means lock. And in Thailand, they call it the Soul Lock necklace. But that's, they believe.
And in Hollywood.
Yeah. And they believe it's to protect your spirit from like outside forces. And it keeps you, I guess, level.
Sorry, every time it just reminds me of the TV network that, I don't know, it just made it so corny for me. Okay, sorry, go on.
Oh, where the ghost tried to get her?
Yeah,
She's
I was like,
so lock.
why? Oh my god, it's so weird. Okay,
But I think that's a Thai stereotype on the soul lock necklace. I don't know,
That's
because
interesting.
that's oral history. I don't
Interesting.
know.
Okay.
Everybody has one for
Right.
But then going back to China and from our travels, right? Remember when we were in China and they were telling us, oh, the Sao, we wore it as a symbolic remembrance to signify that we are Hmong. And I was like, why? Why is it? Because they're like, all minorities look alike, but only the Hmong people wore the Sao. They said, because it might be because we were once serfs or slaves, so they gave us the Sao to differentiate us from other minorities. And I was
who
like,
gave
what?
us the Sao? Who gave us the Sao?
Right?
I'm interested.
And
That's that's an interesting statement. They gave us the Sao.
Yeah. And then I was like, wait, who? The people in power? The emperor? the Han Chinese? Is it the other minorities? So I was like, interesting. So I shouldn't be wearing the Sao anymore. I don't know how much truth it is.
So not everyone likes that story or that narrative of the Sao, right? Because my understanding of Lu Sauna, because it's called lock, and it translates as lock, like Sao. And some oral history variations of where it came from is that we were enslaved at one point. We were serfs, we were enslaved, indentured servants, however you want to call it. And we actually were like chained and had to wear locks. Yes. But in our development, in our access to having more freedom, we decided to hold on to these sort of as this remembrance of our past, but also kind of like turning a negative into a positive, turning these chains and these shackles into these beautiful silver jewelry. Like that is my understanding of Lu Sao, okay? And that aligns a lot, I think, with our general history of like being in opposition to people in power in Asia, to empires that were in power that, colonized us through imperialism, colonization, however you want to call it. So that's my understanding. And I think that not everyone likes that interpretation, maybe because it's kind of like shameful to remember. I just think that people don't like it because they don't want to remember stuff like that.
I think that's true, yeah.
But like they're ashamed of it. Why do you want to remember or like proclaim, yeah, I was enslaved at one point. Look at my jewelry. I don't know. But
right?
In my personal just like observation of different types of Sao and necklaces worn by Hmong Miao, quite a lot of them are chain looking, like they look like chains. Quite a lot of them have larger
locks
that look
right?
literally like a lock where you would put a key into. And so I think it's super interesting. And although now they're just like these beautiful necklaces, like when you look at aspects of them and when you go and look at other groups in China, you kind of start seeing where that whole lock, like it just looks like it. It's interesting. So I'd be interested in knowing if this story exists in other Hmong cultures or Miao cultures
or other minority cultures. When you see like it has that much significance in the culture and it's sexualized and it's all that, then you can see why people's upset.
So on the topic of cultural appropriation, I was just really surprised that some folks were like, why are Hmong people speaking out now when they're appropriating other cultures?
Oh,
like
yeah,
we've appropriated Lao dress, that we've appropriated Cambodian dance, Cambodian dress.
Sewn it onto American clothes or regular, not American
I think
clothes,
that's an interesting
the modern day clothing.
I think that's an interesting conversation. What do you think about it?
We're a minority, and we adapt. We didn't choose to do it. We had to do it, and in order to change or keep our culture alive, I think, in Laos, right? You think about when Hmong kids in Laos, they went to school, they had to wear Lao dresses. They had to change and adapt. So how do you differentiate yourself from the Lao students? You put a little Hmong symbol on your clothes, and it just evolves over time, and then you start appropriating it into your own culture. But I don't think it's cultural appropriation because we're not making any money from it. Like, we're not. It's a power thing, right? The definition I read earlier is that you have a privileged status. Is Hmong people privileged enough to do this and make $1 million? We're not.
That's a interesting question because we are a minority, and I feel like if people feel like we're appropriating other cultures, what does that say about our status? Do we actually have the power and privilege to appropriate cultures that are larger, like more majority than us, if that makes sense?
I don't think we have that power. I think we do have the freedom, the will, and we do have because we're in America, we have the freedom to do anything and create anything. But when it comes to power, control, influence, and changing the narrative in America, we don't. Because look at other cultural appropriation issues in the past, right? About the Max Mara issue,
with the Oma people,
with the Oma people, and then the
Epanon
London.
See, those issues I think are way more defined and clear.
The royal
in my
wedding,
opinion.
the royal wedding, and his Prince Harry's ex-girlfriend wore the Hmong dress.
Well, okay, so that takes me back to, and we might be jumping around a little here, but that takes me back to this idea of like how cultural appropriation impacts, or like how the Hmong community actually just like what they often want to see is just the Hmong name attached to these items. But for me, I'm thinking more like, okay, well, what about like the people who are making this? Like, do they get credit? Do they, are they being exploited? Are they, getting the return on investment almost? Like these are designs that we've developed and carried and cared for generations, for the last however many years, and now they're being taken by people with more power, with more privilege, with more access, by companies, by brands, and then being touted as like a new invention or like some type of like, okay, Laurel Street said this is a Hmong-inspired outfit. But how is it Hmong-inspired if literally verbatim it's like literally a Hmong sao? Like she did not reinterpret it. She did not redesign it. She didn't make it. She said it was like I think somewhere it was like custom made or something, and it's like
it is custom made, but not by her. And then
I don't know if it's custom made. Someone online went and found the exact sao, and posted a picture of it.
For sale. Yeah.
Well, I'm just like, that's not custom made. These are actually mass produced to some degree and sold by, like Hmong vendors from Thailand. Yeah. And so I don't understand how you can just buy one probably for like $50-$60 and just like upsell it. Like, oh, it's custom made. Like that seems a little... I mean, I think a lot of people do that, though. The thing is, like, companies can be more socially aware. Like, I met a woman who was doing yoga clothes, and she was using Hmong batik designs, but she's working specifically with Itu Nitai, or like a grandmother, an older woman who has been making batik for her whole entire life in Thailand, to craft designs and paying her, and then also taking a portion of what she makes and donating it back into the community to fund the schools in that part of Thailand. So I mean, that like if you're using designs to create new designs, but you're also kind of creating this healthy economic system, like I think that's a lot more fair than, I don't know if Epanon London is donating anything back to the people they buy their textiles from. And they're making like what? What's the percentage profit? Like you can buy a piece of fabric like that for $50 in Thailand or Vietnam, and then you just turn it into a dress and you can sell for $3,000. Like,
because they have the brand, the power. Back to cultural appropriation, they are a major clothing brand, and they have the power that and they're not selling it among people, like you said. They're selling it to celebrities.
So how do you think we can address cultural appropriation?
I think, moving forward, for me, I always see things that cultural appropriation. I would say it's okay to have Hmong-inspired designs by people who are non-Hmong, but the credit has to be there. If you're planning to sell it to the community, make it affordable, because you because you're privileged, you can outprice. You're outpricing the vendors from Vietnam, Laos, Thailand, China, and like your profit margin is probably like 200, 300, 400% higher. And so it's like, it is cultural appropriation because you're using your privilege, your leverage to reach a market that they can't. I think for the Hmong community, it's like, okay, how do we do this? How do we support our Hmong artists or our Hmong designers so that they could be the next major fashion designer? They could be that, because I think in our community, we don't invest much into our arts and craft. Like, that's like very low on our list. Like,
people don't appreciate Kunya Hmong.
yeah,
I mean, I think more and more now, but when I dig into some of the stuff from the past, like, I think people are just like, Bandao, what about it? Kind of thing.
Yeah, for me, I buy clothes from China because I travel a lot. And one day I was like, I'm going to buy these clothes I see from China that I keep traveling to because they look nice. But then I realized I start buying it, and then you're like, oh, the price tag is like $200-$300. And people's like, they're not going to buy it because they're only going to wear it one time or it's for show. But it's like, how do the Hmong community support, our Hmong artists, designers, or how do we even create a brand that could be sold to the public? Like, because we have the same freedom, the same Hmong Americans, as Hmong Americans, we have the same access to the market as a regular Americans. Of course, we're gonna face a last door because we're a minority. But how do we get through that? How do we get past that?
How we move forward or address cultural appropriation is really interesting. You provide really great insights on like economic, like business wise, because that's
I'm
your.
sorry. I come
No,
from a
that's
world
good. But like I always just think about it from my studies as a textile bandao person, and I'm looking at it from like what I see, how people respond. Like a lot of people were really angry about this, and I would just be honestly say, like, I had a delayed response, maybe because I've seen so many of these cases that I was almost surprised to see like such a huge response to this. And it made me think a lot about like how people feel. Like people are really angry, and some people are becoming also very just like, I don't care. So it makes me see that there are certain things people want, right? So Hmong folks want to educate people on their culture and what it means to be Hmong, because in doing that in some way, it seems to support our own desire to preserve our culture and continue with our culture. But at the same time, like, we're an indigenous peoples, and I think we align with a lot of other indigenous peoples, and that we're relearning our history and our culture every day. And so there's more for us to learn about it. And people are kind of becoming almost, what's that word? They're becoming like numb to it almost, I think. They're not caring as much. But we also want to grow economically and creatively. And it almost feels like sometimes when you keep something in a bubble, then it's hard to grow. So there's sort of this struggle, right? Because we want to preserve something, but we want to grow. And people are talking about, well, this is a type of cultural appreciation. It's not necessarily bad. Like, it's putting Hmong clothes on the spot. Like, it's highlighting Hmong culture in clothes. And we want to be able to participate in this larger context in this world. But how do we participate? Because you were saying, like, how do we support our own Hmong artists so that our stuff's not being stolen by other like designers and other companies and brands?
That's how I think that's what we lack in the Hmong community. Is like, I love the Hmong community. We go on social media, we call people out, but how do we channel our energy? How do we channel?
It's true. It's almost like it gets so big and then it just conflates
something
to the point where people just get tired. It's like, okay, again.
It's another thing
again, so that's
but,
a great question.
And then they say somebody else will do it. Who? If you don't do it, there's a white company out there or somebody. I'm not saying white person out there who's gonna do it, and they're gonna succeed, and it's not gonna be you, and then we're gonna be mad again.
So that's a good question.
Yeah.
Maybe
so,
that's a question for us to end on to think more about.
Yeah. So I think.
What do we want to do about it?
Yes.
And what are we going to do about it?
Yeah,
It
because
has to be collective.
It's been repetitive over and over. And so, does it come from policy? Does it come from advocacy? Does it come from a group who thinks alike that comes together and monitor these things?
Yeah.
And do all that? Do we create a council that
we
looks
should
at fashion and all that? I mean, we have so many Hmong people.
I would love to do that if anyone wants to join.
That is in like fashion and design. You know,
I think it's needed.
Yeah,
but the thing is, we need to have more of these conversations.
I think we do,
and not just have it sporadically online here and there, but come together.
Well, I think
to like have and actually like create like action plans. Right. And
because I think a lot of folks, you know, you go online to voice your anger, your vent, you know, and then that's it. You put it there, done. You said your piece, and then you move on with your life. But I think that's good too, because you're bringing awareness. But then somebody has to do the work, or somebody has to continue the fight to get a certain result so that things don't repeat itself. I think, you know, one of the examples I see is when Kim Kardashian, she wanted to create a swimsuit wear, right? And then she wanted to call it the kimono. and
people were mad.
People were mad.
Why
like
would
Japan,
you do that? Like
everyone
that just
in
makes...
Japan, everyone in Japan would be like, no, the
so
kimono
rude.
is ours.
I'm sorry. I don't even hate Kim K. I kind of like her, but she's so rude. That's rude. Yeah.
And so they actually lobbied. They stopped her from getting it patented and you know, own the rights to it. And so she stopped. So her swimsuit wear is not called kimono anymore. That's something to think about. You know, definitions, right? Where do we go from here? Well, this is our hot take. On Hmong-ish. Like and subscribe to our channel, social media. Definitely we want to engage with our viewers out there.
So let us know what you think by dropping a comment down below, and we'll see you next time.